Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Reverend Judy Pando. Our beloved senior minister, Reverend Bonnie Rose, is on vacation. Yay! She's visiting her in-laws. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. So today we have Michael Eselun. We have our choir who's going to sing for us today. And let's begin. You know, I haven't done this in a long time, so if I forget something, just remind me, okay? What do we do now? Congregational song. Let's stand up and sing.
Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrow, and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend.
Indeed, it is only kindness and compassion and love that makes any sense anymore. And how good it is to be reminded of that in these times when the opposite appears to be showing up. Only kindness, only compassion and love make any sense at all. And so let's remember that as we sing together, I am remembering who I am, a vehicle for kindness and compassion and love. How beautiful it is to be in the silence, remembering who we are, remembering who and what we are. Knowing that right here, right now, God is, as God is in everything, every place, everywhere, in everyone. From this place of oneness, from this place of remembering that we are love and kindness, and that's what we're here to transmit through and as us, I give great thanks. And I release this word into mystical law, knowing that it is so. And together we say, and so it is.
I am held in the hands of grace, forever safe in the arms of love. Like a child receives affection from a mother's warm embrace, I am held in the hands of grace. We are held in the hands of grace, forever safe in the arms of love. Like a child of protection from a mother's warm embrace. We are held in the hands of grace. You are held in the hands of grace, forever safe in the arms of love. Like a child receives protection from a mother's warm embrace, you are held in the hands of grace. I am held in the hands of grace, forever safe in the arms of love. Like a child receives protection from a mother's warm embrace, we are held in the hands of grace. Grace, 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 held in the hands of grace.
You know, as a fledgling chaplain, I've been doing hospice chaplaincy for about 6 months. It is really an honor to introduce this man who's a guru of chaplaincy. He is a certified chaplain, and in chaplain terms, it is a kind of a big deal to be certified. That's something that is strive for. Michael Eselun serves as the chaplain for Simsman UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology. He has been invited many times to speak to us. This is what, your 6th time here? Yes. He's been invited many times to speak to students, doctors, nurses, social workers, and dozens of faith communities across the country in his work as a chaplain. He recently gave the keynote at the National Conference for Women Living with Metastatic Breast Cancer in Philadelphia. Michael is also a co-founder and chair of a nonprofit volunteer anti-homophobia speakers bureau called GLIDE, Gays and Lesbians Initiating Dialogue for Equality. Over the last 20-plus years, Michael and his fellow speakers have spoken to an audience of over 200,000 students, teachers, and other various groups and agencies in the LA area about homophobia. Michael has a TED Talk available online via YouTube. It's called It's Magic. And you can find out more about him at www.michaeleslum.com. He will have 3 volumes of his CDs available for purchase after the service. Each includes several of his talks, and his most recent CD is brand new. So let's give a great big Ventura welcome to Michael Eselun.
Thank you, Julie. Well, that's very, very kind. Thank you so much. One of those admonitions we often heard as children was, don't talk to strangers. Many of us were groomed, in fact, to be wary, distrusting, and fearful. With good reason, I suppose. Yet, according to Lord Jonathan Sacks, who's the former chief rabbi in the UK, the Hebrew Bible commands us only one time to love thy neighbor, commands us 36 times to love the stranger. Hospitality to strangers is a principle in most of the world's great religions. And yet we only have to look as far as our own national conversation about immigration, or closer to home, I'm embarrassed to say, at my own behavior behind the wheel making my daily crosstown commute, to see that we've largely tossed that one aside. While we're used to hearing the expression a complete stranger or a total stranger, I'm struck by the equally common expression perfect stranger and by its unintended double meaning. Dozens of times in my life, I've encountered the perfect stranger. Just the right person at the right moment who offers the right kindness, the right word, poses the right question, or maybe points me in a direction I never would have considered. To put that last piece in a more personal kind of context, I do need to share that I've judged myself rather harshly throughout my adult life for not having taken a more conventional, linear path to professional success. You know what I mean: college, graduate school, good job, better job, make more money, then you retire, then you die. At the same time, I've taken no small satisfaction and even a little pride in having chosen a more circuitous life path, but I can blame a few perfect strangers for that, who have stood right in the middle of my path uninvited. One such person is a member at my home congregation at the Santa Monica Unitarian Universalist Church, Cassandra Christensen. Over 25 years ago, stood in the middle of my path and held up a sign that pointed to chaplaincy so many years later. Sometimes when we keep our hearts and eyes open, a stranger can show up and point us in that direction we never would have considered. Another example came for me in 1973. I was a freshman at UCLA, majoring in design, very focused on my future career and success. I also happened to really love dancing, and I was taking dance classes at the old Roland Dupre studio on La Cienega in Hollywood. I was even on scholarship, which meant I could take as many classes as I wanted for free in exchange for a few chores around the studio. That's because Roland thought he was grooming a future professional. I knew in my bones that that wasn't in the cards for me, but I went along with the program because I wanted the classes. I was a part of a small company of dancers that gave a one-night concert performance to showcase the choreography of one of the teachers at the studio, Chuck Moore. One of the other teachers at the studio, Joe Bennett, came to see that performance and was apparently impressed enough with my work that he took it upon himself to invite a friend of his, Walter Painter, a well-known choreographer at the time, to come observe me in class because he knew Walter needed another male dancer to fill out his chorus for a season of summer stock at the Sacramento Music Circus. Well, apparently the whole class knew who Walter was except me. They were all knocking themselves out and selling it to beat the band, and there I was clueless. But I was the one who got the note after class. Please call me about work. So I called him and he offered me the job. And my initial response, I'm a little embarrassed to say, was, Sacramento? In the summer? It's kind of hot, isn't it? What was I thinking? I was 18 years old. What better summer job could there be? And it certainly paid a hell of a lot more than selling bell-bottoms at the Broadway or the May Company. So I took the job, and I had the time of my life. Worked my tail off. 5 shows in 6 weeks. You rehearse 1 show during the day, you perform the other one at night, no nights off. I have the fondest memories of that summer. And it actually marked the beginning of a career as a professional dancer that I said I never wanted, that ended up paying for the rest of my college education. I still take dance class from Walter every Saturday, some 44 years later, with a bunch of old dancers. It's the highlight of my week. But I need you to hear that I didn't set my sights on that direction at all. Just like I never set my sights on this career of chaplaincy. I felt kind of led here. So what is it that makes a stranger sometimes more perfect for us than perhaps a loved one, a family member, a good friend? For one thing, a stranger generally has no agenda for us at all. No need to fix us or correct us or contextualize our lives for us on our behalf. More often than not, they're completely indifferent to us. And yet in our bumping up against one another, sometimes there can be a gift. Maybe a new awakening, a new awareness of a new truth, a revelation, maybe a reminder of an old one. A few years back, I had a breast cancer patient named Dorothy, whom I would visit every week in the clinic while she was getting her chemo infusion. Her husband, Frank, came to every single appointment with her. Frank was a bit of a grumpy Gus. He was kind of a curmudgeonly fellow. He was a passionate collector and restorer of antique and vintage cars. I listened to many stories about their cross-country trips to various car shows. And one week, Frank was telling me what happened after the previous week's appointment. That week, he had chosen to drive one of his restored beauties to the clinic. And when they went back out to the parking structure after her infusion, he found the side of his car bashed in. Now, any of you that have been in that situation, you know that feeling of deep disgust and outrage. And he makes his way closer to the car, and then he sees the note under the windshield wiper. Name, address, insurance information, apology, phone number. I had for weeks been listening to Frank tell me how disenchanted he'd become with the human race, and here he had been given this gift. Michael, I gotta tell you, it was almost worth the headache of having to get my car fixed just to be reminded that there's still good people out there in the world. Now, it was Frank's creative choice to find the meaning in that ordeal, but it was a stranger having done the right thing that provided the catalyst. Sometimes a stranger can be a kind of teacher. A number of years ago, October of '09, my husband Scott and I took a trip to Eastern Europe, and we made a stop in Krakow, Poland, in order to visit Auschwitz and Birkenau. For those of you who have not been, as you might imagine, it is an overwhelming, devastating experience. We chose to rent a couple of those little acoustic guides so we could tour the camps at our own pace rather than join a guided tour group, thinking that might dilute our experience. It was hard to know what to do with the intensity and volume of emotion that would come up with each step, rounding each corner. There were so many moments I wanted to say, stop, get me out of here, I can't breathe. But I knew I had to. I had to bear witness to every inch that I possibly could. It would somehow be a sin not to. In the years since, there have been those who have asked, why would you have ever wanted to go? Particularly as a Gentile. I mean, I get it, it's a place of pilgrimage for Jews, but why was it important for you? It always struck me as an odd question. The best answer I have is that it's important to me to try to bear witness to the absolute worst of humanity, as much as I would want to bear witness to the best of it. Not only to bear witness to it, but to also own that those aspects of humanity are alive within me too. Cruelty, hatred, anger, indifference, apathy. I've always tried to embrace the notion that nothing human is foreign to me. It always seemed a little glib to dismiss the Holocaust as some kind of aberration committed by subhuman evil monsters. Thank God I'm not like that, huh? It was unseasonably cold for late October, bitterly cold, in fact. As I was walking the camps, I found myself wondering about the more peripheral workers at the camps who must have certainly witnessed the most horrific scenes day in and day out, and presumably went home at the end of the day to loved ones and families, normal life. Hi, hon, I'm home. How was your day? Is it humanly possible to compartmentalize to that degree? And just then, this sweet little stray cat rubbed up against my ankles. He was winding his way in and around my feet, purring his little head off, and I squatted down to give him some love. Come here, sugar. Wanted to squeeze myself into some bubble of sweetness and affection, desperately wanting a momentary reprieve from all of this horror. And in an instant, feeling so much guilt for wanting that reprieve and for taking it. And in the same instant, I realized I had my answer. That's how it's done. You simply move into another bubble of reality. That cat was my teacher. That cat was a perfect stranger. Not long ago, a colleague of mine asked me to go see Bruce in the hospital, who was dying of end-stage liver cancer. I only met Bruce the one time, and I only saw him through this very narrow window of critical illness at the end of his life. Still, such a narrow opening can offer a surprisingly intimate view, particularly to the stranger. Bruce is one who had lived his life on a very big stage, one of corporate boardrooms and international travel. His world had now shrunk down to the size of this hospital room. Not having many friends or family about, his society had now been distilled down to that of the doctors and nurses and housekeeping staff who came in to clean his room. Bruce seemed to be at kind of a spiritual crossroads. He wanted to connect with the Methodist faith he dimly remembered from his youth. He wanted to pray, but he didn't know how. He didn't know for what. It all seemed so pointless now. So rather than launch into some lofty theological discussion, we started closer in. And I asked Bruce just to consider and reflect upon the magic inherent in small gestures of kindness. Tender mercies, if you will. Oh, I understand exactly what you mean, Michael. Just last night, I had the most wonderful conversation with the woman who came in to clean my room. Now, if you met Bruce, you would never peg him to be the one having a conversation with the housekeeping staff. But life had changed. The world had changed. She was it in this moment. Michael, she had such a nice smile, and she was so warm. She just made me feel like somehow it was okay. She even gave me a little gift. And his eyes filled with tears as he pointed to the little plastic angel sitting over there on the shelf. I knew he had been touched by the magic of just being seen, of being witnessed, of connecting. I, for one, put my faith in those kinds of connections and that kind of connectedness, often between strangers. A number of years ago, I was invited to speak at the cancer support community over in Calabasas, Westlake, to an audience of primarily cancer patients. And after my talk, there was a time for Q&A, and a woman asked me what I thought was the meaning of life. Oh, that. Well, I'm trying to come up with something reasonable to say. She didn't wait for my answer. She wanted to give me hers, which was as it should be. She said, well, Michael, I think the meaning of life is that everybody wants to be known, as in seen and understood. And I remember at the time my judging mind going into overdrive thinking, well, that's way too simplistic, dear, but thank you for sharing. Is there another question? But I'll tell you, I have quoted her countless times in the years since because I think she came close to hitting it right on the head. I've seen it too many times. I've experienced it too many times myself. The healing magic in just being seen, received, accepted as I am in my life, as it is right now. About a year ago, I went to fill up my car at the local gas station. The USA station has the lowest prices in the neighborhood. And that afternoon, the place was jumping. I had to wait for a pump. So space opens up, I pull in, I fill up my car, and then I get in, and it's time to back out, and I'm checking my side view mirrors, I'm checking my rear view mirror, I'm checking my camera, and then I hear crunch. I'd hit one of those 3-foot-tall posts filled with concrete that are there to protect the apparently very fragile concrete curb surrounding the gas station sign. And I didn't know it in that moment, but it was a $1,500 mistake. Now, anybody who knows me knows that such a mistake is proof in my mind that I don't deserve to live. I wish I were kidding. I got out of the car to inspect the damage. I'd hit the one spot that was out of view of all my mirrors and camera, and I'd hit it in just the right way that my rear bumper, the rear quarter panel, the hatch cover, and the tail light were all damaged. The taillight lay there on the cement like some wounded animal. I sat there staring at this catastrophe, contemplating my own suicide, and I didn't notice the man in front of me who was pumping gas into his car who had seen the whole thing. Big, strapping fellow you would never cast to be the merciful angel in this moment. He comes over to me and just says, oh, man, that's rough, dude. I'm sorry. Not knowing what else to do, he bends over and picks up my taillight, and he tenderly hands it to me, as if it's my wounded dog. And I take the taillight and thank him, and I put it in the trash. And there's a part of me perceiving this whole scene and even kind of sees the dark humor in it, but I'm way too lost in my own grief and self-reproach, but also gratitude for him. I knew in that moment that he really softened the blow for me by just seeing it. He got it. He knew how much it hurt. I couldn't thank him enough for his kindness. In our 39 plus years together, Scott and I have always had cats. And in December of 2001, our boy Junior died. There has never been one before or since, quite like Junior Junebug. It was a Friday morning. I was at home. Scott was en route coming home from a business trip to New York. I decided to stay home with Junior's body, thinking Scott might want to see him to say goodbye before we took him in to get cremated.
Scott's plane landed in the afternoon, and he called from the cab, and I told him that Junior's gone. And I asked him if he wanted me to wait for him to see him, and he said, no, please, I can't see him like that. Will you please take him into the vet? So I wrapped his little body in a blanket, and I put him in the car, and I drove over to the vet. And I didn't want to bring his stiff little body in through the waiting room where everybody's picking up their dogs and cats, so I left him in the car, and I just went up to the front desk, and I choked it out, my little boy's gone. Will somebody please come out to the car and get him? And I went back out to the car, and I held Junior for the last time, and out comes this little Latino vet's assistant, and when he sees me, his shoulders just go like that. He just saw me. He got it. And I kissed Junior for the last time, and I handed him over, and I got back in my car, and I just sobbed and sobbed. I was unaware of the couple that were their German Shepherd who had seen the whole transaction. And they walked over to my car window and knocked. And I rolled down the window, and they just said, can we drive you home? I didn't accept their offer, but those 5 words changed my life. They imprinted my heart with what it means to be seen, what it means to give kindness. So what is it that keeps us from being the perfect stranger? From being that says, I'll step up, I'll be your witness, I'll see you, I will face my own powerlessness, knowing there's nothing I can do to make this better. I do think that's it right there. It is not an easy thing to come right next to another person in their suffering, keep it zipped, knowing there's nothing you can say to make this better, but be kind, be a witness. Show up. About a year ago, I was speaking to another congregation, and a man came up to me afterward and said, how is it possible for you to create these intimate, meaningful relationships with your patients? It must take a lot of time to build that kind of trust, I imagine. I thought for a moment, I said, you know what? No, it doesn't. It takes no time at all. Hearts are already broken wide open. The stakes are too high. It just doesn't make any sense at all to stand on ceremony. Much in the same way, one might have a very vulnerable, intimate conversation with a perfect stranger one meets while traveling, particularly to a very far away place. There both of you are, outside of your element, vulnerable, nothing's familiar. It just doesn't make any sense to stand behind the facades we use at home. Last year, a friend of mine lost his elderly mother, and I called him the day after she died just to check in and see how he was doing. And he said, the crazy thing is, Michael, everybody keeps waiting for me to fall apart, including myself, and of course I don't. But I'm finding it's strangers that get past my defenses in a way that those closest to me just cannot. About 6 years ago, I had a patient, Randy, who was in his early 50s, stage 4 colon cancer. I had so many wonderful conversations with him over the last 2 years of his life. And a few months before he died, I was walking him out of the clinic, and we walked out into the hallway. We were still chatting, and up walks another patient trying to make her way to the door of the clinic. She's on a walker, tenderly making her way. He says, just a minute, Michael. And he goes and he gets the door for her. Simple gesture. There you go. Big smile on his face. He comes back to me and says, you see, Michael, the way I see it, that's my job now, to be kind. Now, Randy is one whose life had been animated by high pressure, success, commercial real estate, all about that. His professional life had now been distilled down to that as one who gives kindness. Cancer had taken so much from him, but it didn't take away that career opportunity. It didn't take away that place to still find meaning in his life. Many years ago, I saw an interview between Bill Moyers and Pema Chodron, the well-known Buddhist teacher and author. They were talking about New York after 9/11. And Bill was commenting on how New Yorkers, right after 9/11, weren't behaving like New Yorkers at all. They were really watching out for each other, checking in on each other, taking care. And slowly, as life got back to normal, they started acting like New Yorkers again. And Pema suggested that's because right after 9/11, people really understood the groundless nature of life, that there is nothing permanent, there is nothing to hold on to. And when we really get it, the groundlessness of life, the only response that makes any sense at all is kindness. To each other, to ourselves. It's so deceptively simple. It is such a wildly undervalued virtue, kindness. And yet I believe it offers us the pathway to being that perfect stranger. And in recognizing and feeling some gratitude for those little kindnesses shown to us, we get to experience the magic of so many perfect strangers in our midst, even from those who are willing to drive us all the way home. So be it. Thank you. Oh. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I am an absolute puddle. You described so beautifully why I love chaplaincy so much. It's not so much for what I can do for my patients, it's what they do for me. They crack my heart open so wide, and they teach me how to validate myself and other people just by knowing the truth of them, that they are perfect right here, right now, in this moment, exactly as they are, regardless of any and all appearances. So let's do that for one another right now. Let's turn within in prayer. How good it is. How good it is to be together in this way. How good it is to know that right here, right now, God is. It is in me, it is in you, it is in each and every one of us in here, and it is our job to see it and to be kind to one another and to be kind to strangers and to be kind to our mother and our father and our sisters and our brothers, because they are who we are. I am so grateful for this place. I am so grateful to be surrounded by so many people who get it, that God is within me. I can see it. It's within you. I can see it. I know it. And I love it. And so with a heart that is open wide, I release this word into mystical law, knowing that it is done. And together we say, and so it is.
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be bright, sunshiny day. Yes, I can make it now, the pain is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. is a rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be bright, bright, sunshiny day. Look all around, nothing but blue sky. Look straight ahead, nothing but blue sky. I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Here is the rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be bright, bright, sunshiny day.